This episode is brought to you by Huel. Huel is a complete meal with nutrients you need to thrive, which is why I love it, because I can just throw this stuff in their cute little shaker and get on my way. I just tried Huel's Black Edition vanilla flavor and it was amazing. I like to mix mine with a banana and a little bit of chocolate. And just when you thought Huel had everything covered, they just dropped a first of its kind Super Greens drink in a can. It's called Huel Daily Greens Ready to Drink. You can try Huel right now with 15% off for new customers today using my code DENVER at huel.com/Denver. Fuel your best performance with Huel today. That's huel.com/Denver. And don't forget to use my special code DENVER. This episode is brought to you by Window Nation. It's September, cooler weather's on the way, and if your windows are drafty or leaky, now's the time to act. Replace your older builder-grade windows with custom-built, high-quality windows from Window Nation. And hey, no better time than right now. Through the month of September, buy 2 windows and get 2 free. Hurry, the buy 2 windows, get 2 free sale ends September 30th. Don't miss out. This is Window Nation's most popular deal. Schedule a fast free estimate now with Window Nation at windownation.com. That's windownation.com. Today on CityCast Denver. Between the proposed women's soccer stadium and the struggles of business owners along South Broadway, it seems like a lot of Denver's most contentious debates are playing out in Council District 7. So we invited Councilmember Flor Alvidrez to give us the inside scoop, from the business-friendly policies she's proposed and had shot down to her tempered enthusiasm for the stadium project and why the team's owners are starting to worry. Today is Monday, September 8th. I'm Bree Davies, and here's what Denver's talking about. Councilwoman Flor Alvidrez, welcome to CityCast Denver.
Hi, thanks for having me.
And producer Paul Karolyi is also here. Hi, Paul.
Also here. Hey,
he's also
what's
here.
Up? So we're going to talk about a bunch of big issues in your district and just facing the whole city, but just open-ended, the latest. What's the new exciting thing in District 7?
Oh, man. I mean, there's a lot happening, and I think we have a lot to talk about between the JID, Broadway, and the soccer team coming to District 7. Other than that, I mean, parks are always a hot topic, so working on those and all the exciting things at Levitt Pavilion. I mean, District 7 is just such a fun place, so we always have stuff going on.
Can I ask you about a rumor I heard recently?
Yeah.
So the Mutiny Information Cafe, they just recently moved down to Englewood. That's leaving the old space, the beloved old space,
Broadway,
vacant,
right. Mm-hmm.
Except maybe, and this is the rumor part, that there has been some possibly underground
Raves.
DJ rave.
Yes.
You've heard about
You've
these?
heard this as well?
I can confirm that has happened, yes.
Have you maybe attended one?
I have not attended one, no.
Sorry to hear that. I didn't get the invite either.
Yeah,
look, it
so
happens.
I'm pretty sure they're not like, oh, let's invite the councilwoman.
I was going to say also,
it.
no offense to either of you, but I don't think they send invites. You got to know a guy.
Do you know a guy?
I used to know a guy. This is not my scene. I knew a guy back when pagers were part of the equation, so I can't say I know a guy these days.
Yeah, I've never known a guy. That's just, I mean, if you listen to the show, you know, that's who I am. I'm not a guy who knows a guy. But if you're a guy, reach out. I'd love to know you.
He wants to go to the rave.
Get Paul on the text.
Maybe, yeah.
On the text list.
Sounds cool.
For the parties happening. There are parties too. If you want to sound cool, you don't say rave. You
say rave.
You
That's
say party.
old
Yeah.
school.
Okay.
Okay.
A guy with a, sure. Great.
Guy knows where the party's
Party is like, so 360, right? Like from back in the day.
It's a very vague, broad term, but I just remember that from my rave days was like, you didn't call it a rave. If you called it a rave, you were definitely a narc.
Well,
the more we know, the more we know. Well, we're going to talk about actually some of the things that you also mentioned, Councilwoman, but let's start with the mayor. He's preparing to propose his 2026 budget later this month. He laid off 169 people and eliminated hundreds of other positions, and morale within city government is low. How are you feeling about the mayor and the budget shortfall that led to the layoffs?
Well, with the layoffs, it's been really hard. It's been a really dark couple of weeks in the city. We didn't get information on like who was laid off. So for example, usually if someone is no longer with the city and you email them, you'll get a bounce back saying, hey, I'm no longer with the city. So we don't even have that. So you're kind of like emailing into the ether, wondering if you'll get a response because we're not really clear on who's still there and who's not. People you have closer relationships with, like the Office of Children's Affairs was something I had heard about for a long time. So when I was thinking about it recently, the budget amendments that I have proposed over the last few years have been for the Office of Children's Affairs, mental health, and the sheriffs, which was also cut, and a couple of other things that I can't think of off the top of my head. And so those were things that were already on our radar, that were really small offices, but doing really important work. So it's been really hard. It's been really confusing. I think we had our briefing with several offices, including the Office of Children's Affairs, and it sounds like a hope might be they'll be able to get more money into the hands of people, but we just don't know what the goals or ideas were. So,
like the mayor hasn't communicated that, is what you're saying? The goals and ideas?
Right. Right. So he said more to come at the last mayor council meeting. And so we're just waiting to see. I think there's a lot of unknown things as it comes to the budget. Another concern for the council is the elections division. Elections are a hot topic now. We got Space Force moved because we have mail-in ballots. And so how are we going to make sure that we do give people the access to vote? I've been trying to advocate for a drop box in Athmar Park. Athmar Park doesn't have a drop box. So we have to go very into the heart of Ruby Hill neighborhood or across or to Barnum, which I don't.
That's really surprising to me, honestly.
Yeah. And when I voted, I usually go to the Broadway light rail station, which is not easy to access.
Especially going over the Santa Fe Alameda situation.
Yes.
For sure.
So there's a lot of things that we're thinking about. I'm hopeful. I always try to work with the mayor. That's always how I start. But it is hard sometimes. It feels like we get a kind of a bait and switch at times, which the first example is when he first started and we were all standing beside him for this big press conference about homelessness, and he was going to put tiny homes in every single district and address this in a very fair, equitable way. And then, for me, it was very hurtful to see wealthy neighborhoods get them canceled. And I think my district is one of the only ones that has a tiny home village. So it's hard to support things when you don't know what the long-term effects are or what the long-term goals are.
So I on this topic, I want to ask you about this recent Denverite article. There was a line from it that struck us about the layoffs. It read, Alvidrez even questioned whether the budget deficit had been fabricated to justify job cuts. That feels like a big accusation. Can you explain what you meant?
So I didn't use the word fabricated. That is for sure. But what I did say is I don't have actual data on. We're saying that sales tax is down, and that's why. So where was sales tax, say, June of 2024 compared to June of 2025? Can you show me that data? And then that's only one of many revenue sources for the general fund. Where are those other revenue sources? So what we have been provided is, I think, 1.8 million is what we need, and 1.6 million is what they anticipate us having for 2026. But for 2020,
you mean billion?
Right.
For the whole city?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Go on.
For the general fund.
Right.
And so when at the end of last year, there was a lot of talk about slowing sales tax revenue. And what concerned me was when I looked at the report of actual revenue versus our budget, it was almost spot on. And in fact, we were a little bit higher what we made in 2024 rather than what we had budgeted for. So that's where I want to see data. So until I see actual data that shows where these calculations are coming, it's hard. Because we're working off of projections, and projections can easily be manipulated. So I think there's a lack of trust from council in general with the mayor's office and what the information they provide, but I hope for more transparency in the future.
Well, what are you getting at, though? Because you're saying possibly manipulated. And I think what the discrepancy here is these tax revenues that were not as high as expected. We're coming out of the pandemic. It was expected that we were going to have an increase in these revenues, and it wasn't as high as projected. So you're saying they were manipulated, but why would that happen?
Well, the projections were not accurate. Because
Certainly
we
not.
overspent the 2024 budget, right?
Yeah.
But when you look at what we budgeted for 2024, it was an exact number. I can't remember if it was 1.6, 1.7, somewhere around that billion. And that was how much we made in the general fund.
But then what do you mean by manipulated? And like that's getting back to the same thing about the fabrication, where it seems like you're thinking there's something going on with the mayor.
When it's projection, it's not. So when you're talking about a projection, you can go up or down. For example, at one point it was, we're looking at 1.3% growth. Now it's just our 0.3% growth, and then they flattened it to 0% growth. And so I just want to see the data. That's all. I just want to see, okay, if we are, I would love to just see that. Like how much revenue, like I said, if you look at June, cut it off in June of 2025 and show me where we were in June of 2024 with all the revenue sources, then I can see where you're coming from. But really, we are just going on a whim, and so that's concerning to me.
Well, kind of on this same topic, we got some new polling data in from the Colorado Polling Institute last week. They polled Denverites and found that there are about as many people who today say they approve of the mayor as when he was elected, except that there has been a big increase in the number of people who strongly disapprove of him. What do you think about that?
I mean, I would say I hear that from my constituents.
Yeah, what do you hear when they talk about this?
What are they telling you?
My constituents are concerned about the spending. They tell me that they feel that other parts of the city don't matter as much as downtown. When we were talking about crime rates last year, which this is part of what creates a lack of trust, I think, from us, is that we looked at the crime data and then it was removed from the website and changed. And so what the crime data showed was a decrease overall in the city for violent crime, for sure. But when you looked at downtown, that's where that decrease occurred. And in my neighborhood, it was much worse. And so I think that a lot of the city feels like, great that you're focused on downtown, but what does that mean for our area? Violent crime is a very serious issue in the west side of Denver. I have some of the highest violent crime areas in the city, and it has gone down. The last stat I saw for my neighborhood, it was actually higher this year than last year for like the month of June. So it's hard when you don't have all the data right in front of you. But in general, I would say there is that sentiment that great that you care about downtown. What does that mean for the Hornet closing? What does that mean for South Federal? What does that mean when, this is a story that I had yesterday. I went to go visit a small business and they stopped at a taco place on Federal for a few minutes, ran in, their car got broken into, their backpack got stolen. They reached out to DPD, they filed their report. They haven't been able to retrieve those items, but they decided, because they were so passionate, this is an artist, and they lost their laptop, which had a lot of their art catalog and plans for future events. And so they were going up and down Federal looking for the person that stole, because they stole their backpack, because they had it on camera. And while they were doing this, just a little further south on Broadway, they literally watched a SUV pull up to a small business on Federal, break in with bags, take things. They called 911. They sat there and watched everything happen. No one responded till hours later. And so those are the stories and this is just what I heard yesterday. I could go on, but that's a real story of people that just feel like maybe other parts of the city aren't mattering as much.
This episode is brought to you by the Children's Hospital Colorado Foundation. Children's Hospital Colorado is there for families for everything from healing broken bones to treating pediatric cancer. And did you know it's also a nonprofit? Ranked a top 10 children's hospital in the country and the #1 children's hospital in the region, Children's Colorado depends on community support to serve over 296,000 kids every year. At the Children's Gala on September 27th, make life-saving care possible for more kids while experiencing an elegant night of fun and inspiration. Enjoy a cocktail reception, multi-course dinner, an inspiring program, and live music to dance the night away. Or purchase an after-party only ticket to enjoy the live music and late-night bites. Attend the Children's Gala and give families the gift of hope. Get your tickets today at givechildrensco.org/children's gala. That's givechildrensco.org/children's gala. Brought to you by The Drop 104.7. The Drop 104.7 is Denver's home for urban alternative, where hip-hop, R&B, and conscious beats collide. They play everything from the classics to the freshest beats, while highlighting the emerging artists who are pushing culture forward. Catch live performances, artist interviews, and conversations that matter on The Drop. The station is also a hub for music discovery, healing, and community engagement, aimed at inspiring the next generation of creatives and innovators. Plus, The Drop goes beyond just musical offerings. It serves as a vibrant connector for the community, promoting local involvement and celebrating the rich tapestry of culture and arts in the region. I did wander upon the Denver DJ School block party recently, where La Molly was, who's one of the awesome DJs at The Drop, and she was interviewing DJ Maceo from De La Soul. So I randomly got to see DJ Maceo from De La Soul in person, sweetheart, and also Master DJ. It was so cute. Tune in to 104.7 FM in Denver or stream online at thedrop303.org. That's thedrop303.org and discover your next favorite track. This episode is brought to you by Wise. Wise is the app for international people using money around the globe. With Wise, you can send, spend, and receive up to 40 currencies with only a few simple taps and save up to 55% compared to major banks. Plus, Wise won't add hidden fees to your transfer. Whether you're buying souvenirs with pesos in Puerto Vallarta or sending euros to tip your Coliseum tour guide, you know you're getting a fair exchange rate with no extra markups. That's what makes Wise the fast, affordable way to use your money around the globe. Wise offers 24/7 live support and runs over 7 million daily checks to catch and prevent fraud, so you know your money is where it's supposed to be. Be smart. Join the 15 million customers who choose Wise. Download the Wise app today or visit wise.com. Learn more by visiting wise.com/US/compare. T's and C's apply. Let's talk about South Broadway because you brought it up. It's been a topic this year and kind of a tough one. Like you mentioned, the Hornet is closed, Bandit Oak and True Brewing closed, Senor Burritos moved out, Mutiny Information Cafe obviously was a big one. But it's a lot of change really fast for this area. How do you see this moment for South Broadway?
I see Broadway as a very special place. I think it's a place where reinvention has happened over my lifetime. You know, I know knocking doors in Broadway, I talked to a lot of elderly immigrants, a lot of Latinos. Juana Bordas and Mi Casa Resource Center bought their first building in Baker neighborhood. I was meeting yesterday with some community leaders that started a South Broadway coalition to uplift people that were struggling. And so a lot of the immigrant community moved around and left Baker. Some were displaced. Some actually had wanted to go to a nicer neighborhood. Growing up, I don't know if you grew up in the area, but there was a lot of violent crime in the area as well. And so then LGBTQ people were really uplifted by this area. And I think there's still a lot of immigrants there. There are still, you know, it's still a very prideful place for LGBTQIA plus people. And so I think we're in a moment of rejuvenation of like, who are we? What can we do to support each other? And this is an opportunity to form a stronger coalition around what that looks like. For example, Senor Burritos is already Lucky Noodle, which is another really ambitious woman-owned business that tastes really good. And just the other day, I was at a new place called Celebrate You or Celebrate Me. And I walked in and it was this young woman from Arizona that always wanted to start a business and loved Broadway when she came to visit and decided to start a business. And so I think with businesses closing, there is the opportunity for new entrepreneurs to step up. I think about my own story with my family being in construction and choosing not to continue that. You know, most of my life was in construction. And so part of that is learning, is this my passion? Is this my dream? And maybe it's not. And being a small business owner is exhausting. And so maybe businesses aren't all made to last 100 or 200 years. Maybe they're 20, 30-year businesses.
But I think a lot of them are closed, would like to have continued on. I know that Jim Norris and Matt Megacy from Mutiny would have loved to continue at that spot. They had a great reputation. It just wasn't working for them as a business climate anymore. So I think the question for you is, what have you done to support those businesses on Broadway and in all of your district?
Yeah. So what we're working on right now. So yes, I think people would have liked to continue, and they did continue further south on Broadway. I think it's a better environment for them. People cite things like minimum wage and other things, which we do believe are the right thing in Denver. But when it comes to what have I done, well, creating the JID is one opportunity to move that forward. So
you mentioned a couple times, we should explain what that is. The JID is the General Improvement District. This is a group of Broadway business owners who've gotten together. They want to basically tax themselves, and they're asking voters to approve this in November. And if they do, this new tax on businesses and residents in the area will go towards funding things like extra security, graffiti cleanups, trash,
snow cleanup.
Yeah.
So I think it's an opportunity also, not only for those things that you mentioned, but to work as a coalition, whether it's snow removal and sharing those costs or sharing the cost of trash cleanup instead of having to do that by yourself. So that was actually a selling point for some of the landlords, because the residential units on the west side of Lincoln also wanted to join in. So I think that it's a way to reduce cost and share costs for some things that they're paying for anyway, because some of the businesses are paying for maybe security or they are paying for trash. And there are maintenance districts that are broken up throughout Broadway. So this will give them the opportunity to coalesce and be on one portion.
You sounds like you support this.
Yes,
for sure.
I definitely worked very closely with them on this project. So I do support it. It is one solution. It's not the solution for everyone. We have been talking to small businesses about how we can better support them. I think that we want to have excise and license during the budget conversation so we can have that. I think having some services available to come in person and talk in person to a person at the city will help with that. And another thing that we are working on is just an understanding of how many taxes and what all goes into running a small business. So there is about 9 or 10 taxes that you have to pay as a small business, which I don't think people think about. The other struggle that we have seen, especially with small businesses, immigrant businesses, and like federal and that kind of area, is that they don't know that you need a use permit on top. So people don't know what licenses they need to run their business. So if you have like a tire shop, you need a use permit. You also need your sales tax license. You need other licenses. So trying to break that down so businesses know, at least, because I think part of the struggle that they have is the unpredictability of costs. So when they're measuring their bottom line, they think that they're going to have everything covered, but then they get a personal property tax bill for their business. And then they have to do the backflow preventer. And then they have to pay for another inspection. And so what we're trying to do is put together a guide that will actually help people understand what all of those things are.
But even just looking at something like the JID, this is business owners saying, I mean, in one way you could see it as the city's not helping us. We have to help ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is the case. I mean, I think even residents feel that way. We haven't been able to pick up trash on a regular basis. So we haven't been able to provide the services that they would like us to provide.
Is that on you as the council member?
I would say it is on the executive branch. The city staff is the mayor's staff, and he tells them what their priorities are. He chose who to lay off. I didn't have a say in that. I know a lot of the small business office was laid off as well. So what does that say to small businesses in the city? And so that's where I would push back and say, why weren't we part of that conversation? And we're still trying to understand. I am always positive and hopeful and believing in the good in someone. And so my hope is that there's reason. But when you just get to see the departments and when you hear from the people like the small business office, people that got laid off, it is confusing and hard. And so I think especially when you run for office, for example, you believe that you can affect change in more ways than maybe you can. For example, I know when I talked to you early on.
Yes, when you were just starting to run.
Yes.
Yeah.
I had mentioned, can we look at the DOPT tax? Because that puts more money in the worker's pocket, and it also helps small business. And honestly, as someone that opened a small store at one point, it was just a lot of paperwork and burden that you go through. And I met with the Department of Finance about that idea, and they were like, no way. We need all the revenue we can get. That's a huge part of our revenue.
Is that the tax you pay like per employee? Someone else was telling me about that.
Yeah,
Yes.
I've never heard of
Someone else was
DOPD.
complaining to me about this. Apparently, Denver has a high one.
It's an occupational privilege tax. So the idea is that people didn't want to live in Denver anymore, but they wanted to work in Denver and make the Denver wages. So it was a way to recoup the costs of that. Aurora got rid of it just before I ran for office, which is why I thought it was a good idea. And so the occupational privilege tax, it's about $6 every month and $4 for the employer. And when you're so this was the frustrating thing for me when I opened a small store, is that I wasn't necessarily making literally any money, but yet you're taxing me when I'm not making a profit. And that's hard to believe because, there was a point back in the day where you were more taxed on your income, not taxed on not having income. And so that was an idea I had. Other ideas that I've had or pitched, haven't been able to gain traction. And
They didn't like that one? That didn't go anywhere?
The Department of Finance was like, there is no way. I didn't even talk to my colleagues about it, honestly, because I kind of started to think, okay, what's happening with the budget? We're spending all of this money. What does that look like? We've worked on several things that haven't panned out, which is we were trying to look at a sales tax holiday for school supplies, especially when we were looking at 2R. So I was thinking, okay, I wanted to support 2R. I couldn't get there because I was a mom and it was coming into school supply season and I'm buying computers and all the things, and all of that's more expensive, first of all. And then you're going to add an additional sales tax. So that's when we started looking into a sales tax holiday for that. And then that's when the mayor came out with the
2R
budget
was the
conversation.
affordable housing
This was,
tax.
yes, his
sorry.
proposal.
No, it's okay. I was like going through my head, which one is that? But that's why, okay.
That was the sales tax initiative
Sure.
for affordable housing. And so, we've talked about Colfax a lot. We looked at the 1% for the arts. Could we do that for small businesses? And
You've been talking to Frank Locantore.
I gave him that idea.
You gave him that? Okay, because he's been talking. Okay, well, good for you.
Yeah, he did. I feel like he talked about that on our show.
A long time. It's an interesting idea, but it sounds like that went nowhere as well.
So the thing with that is that the 1% has to go to an asset that the city owns, so capital. So the art is something we can own, it's tangible. And that's even become an issue. I know you, Bree, care a lot about live music. So that's become an issue when it comes to how do we support other artists that can't maybe make a physical thing. But anyway, so we can't physically own anything with supporting small businesses. So that type of tax wouldn't work there. The other thing that we've been talking about was a sales tax holiday for businesses maybe that are suffering through this type of situation. And so we've been trying to work with the Department of Economic Development. Adib is the director over there. So we've been trying to talk to him about what we can do there, because I did see that for a little bit when I first was elected while the Broadway bike lane was being constructed. That's something that there's a lot of resentment and anger towards still to this day, but it really did hurt. HQ lost like $200,000 in 1 month because they had to close for the whole month. So construction can really impact these businesses. So we have explored a lot of things. We haven't been able to get consensus or support from the administration or the Department of Finance or DIDO on any of those initiatives. But that's not to say we're not trying.
Sure. Well, let's move on to this big project, this big investment your district that is happening in your district tentatively. The mayor's super excited about it. It's this proposal to build a new stadium for a professional women's soccer team. And the mayor has proposed about $70 million in public funding for infrastructure to support the development and buy the land. When you voted for this preliminary approval in favor of it. But you said you were going to be pragmatic when it came to actually appropriating this money. Looking at the situation post-layoffs, are you still excited about this public subsidy?
I am, not excited about the public subsidy. Super excited to have women's soccer, I am excited about potentially being able to access the light rail station from Athmar Park, from Ruby Hill. Because right now, if you're going to get over there, it's very difficult. Basically, you know the story. Alameda Underpass or Mississippi Underpass, the first death that happened when I was elected was on Mississippi and Santa Fe, and it was a biker. And I bike this area with my son. It is terrifying. So the thing that I think, and I think Councilwoman Lewis said it at that point, and she was talking about Park Hill as well as this, is why do these low-income communities need these projects in order to get the investment
to
they
get the
need?
basic infrastructure?
That
Because
they
that's
need.
what your hope is, right? Is
Right.
that infrastructure will come with the development of the stadium.
Exactly. That's what excites me most about it.
So
And
are you a yes then?
I have not decided.
Really? I saw you wearing the jersey, the T-shirt at the vote. It seemed like you were fully all in at that
that
point.
was before layoffs. That was before other things. And so, I will decide as the time comes and when things happen. Right now, what's going on that I understand is that there's an infrastructure master plan. What does that mean? Does that mean that maybe they're not going to put in the bridges and sidewalks that we need to get to the light rail station? So I need to see that infrastructure master plan. There's talks about TIF funding. What is going to be funded by TIF? What can be funded by TIF? So tax increment finance.
Go on.
I'm learning. So tax increment financing was the clock started ticking in 2017 on this land, that any additional property taxes as the property increased in value would go to pay for infrastructure improvements. So that's why you have that bridge was very expensive. I don't know the price tag, but steel, the bridge to nowhere.
The bridge to nowhere.
It is a very expensive, high-end, highly designed bridge. And so a lot of the funding has been spent. That can be, from what I know. So they're looking at projections for that project. What does that look like? But all that to say that I'm not an automatic yes on anything or automatic yes or no. I always try to keep my mind open. I try not to decide until I have as much information as I can, because you can get a curveball at the last minute or after the vote even. And so all of those things are a priority to me. But the infrastructure and what this means to the community is really important to me, which is, one, yes, economic development. We talked about small businesses. The goal is that this would help support those local small businesses around the area. How can we keep them open, keep them there? And also connectivity and safety for walking and biking across the district is something that has been a priority for me from the beginning.
And just in terms of the timeline, so we're clear. I mean, I think listeners will be curious too. I think there's a rezoning vote that's going to happen in like a month or so on this stadium, and then the appropriation would happen. Would that happen in the context of the budget discussions that y'all are going to have?
No, those would come separately from the budget discussions. Yeah.
Okay, but sometime later this fall?
Potentially, or potentially next year. Yeah,
Okay.
I would say the vote maybe for the land purchase might come first, and then appropriating the money for what infrastructure will be built, because right now we don't know what infrastructure will be built with the public funds.
Have you talked to the team owners a lot? Because I heard that they're getting kind of nervous about the politics here, that people are turning on the mayor and they might not get the support they need.
I haven't talked to them directly, and
You haven't heard anything about possibly this team not happening if they don't get the stadium vote?
no, I have heard that. There is concern. Will this happen? We are on what I have been told is that the soccer team is on a very tight timeline, that they need to have this done by a certain time. They need to, I think, be playing by 2028 or something along those lines. And so they need this to happen like this year, and all of these things. I know that it's already not going to be on their timeline. It's already being pushed out. I think one of the struggles I didn't anticipate was just the community benefit process. They've struggled to have those meetings. They have struggled to get commitments for financing, but I believe they've secured some funding from the Gates family, from the original Gates rubber factory, actually. So they started a foundation afterwards to support the area, and so I think they're going to.
You said that. Are you saying the community benefits agreement process is not been happening? Because
it's happening,
okay,
but
slow.
They don't have a list of what they want, I don't believe.
Okay.
Interesting. Because, yeah, I mean, when Jamie Torres was working on that for the Ball Arena deal, that took 18 months, and it came down to the wire. And I know this one didn't start until like a few months ago. And so it's...
And I would say they're very different, but still, it needs time, and just fundraising is part of that, because when you're talking about, I mean, first of all, we have West Wash Park and LBC R&O. Those R&Os are like on it. They actually have like lawyers on their R&O boards. Like they have their systems and like they're great, and they have their meetings all the time, and they're easy to organize.
You said Wash Park, and I am. My mother lives there. I am not surprised one bit.
The age-old paradox.
Yes.
Yeah. The people that can
have the time and the money and the energy
don't
to
always
devote.
need the help.
And so you have Athmar Park, Ruby Hill, Overland, working class people. They don't have attorneys. Well, I know for sure Athmar doesn't have any attorneys on our R&O. We do have one city planner, I believe. But the ability to get the voices of the community, like, what are your needs? What are your needs? And that's been a constant struggle as for me, even being in office and getting people to even believe that their voice matters. I feel like they have felt ignored for a long time. You know, just look at Federal and Alameda State Highways, very unsafe. We can't walk around very easily, our neighborhoods. And so it's been a struggle. It's taking longer than thought, but it is very different from Ball Arena. Ball Arena was much larger. This is 9 acres. This is a stadium that was a entire neighborhood, which is interesting because before it was a parking lot, it was a neighborhood. But anyway, long story short, it is taking longer, and there's no guarantee this is going to happen. I think they are nervous. I think they have other options. You know, maybe Centennial is like, please. I mean, I have talked to a couple Centennial council members, and they're like, we want it.
We're ready.
So, yeah. So that's the reality. That's the reality.
I mean,
it's not
real.
A guaranteed thing.
Mm-hmm.
It does have to vote. I need my colleagues, and they need my support and my colleagues' support. And so you can't write checks. You can't cash.
Well, Councilwoman Alvidrez, thank you so much for joining us.
Happy to be here. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
That's all for today here on CityCast Denver. If you enjoyed the show, why not take a minute to tell Denver Summit FC owner Rob Cohen about us? Rate the show wherever you get your podcasts, and subscribe to our morning newsletter and learn more about us at denver.citycast.fm. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city.